First of all, I want to thank Notre Dame and also Amanda Adamsick for having us here tonight. It's important, I think, for us to be here. And it's important, I'm so glad it's such a great turnout. I know that you have to be here, but it makes me feel good. You know, I've been here in the past and the room has not been quite so filled. And like I said, there's plenty of room down front. So everybody wants to come down if they want to hear a little bit better or watch the program a little bit better, because, you know, many times when I go out and talk about what we do in the district attorney's office, most people don't really know what it is, what we do. And I'll often, when I go talk to people, I'll say, well, do you watch Law and Order? And they'll say, yeah. I say, do you watch CSI? And they say, oh yeah, and they're all nodding their head. And then they'll say, well, I'll say to them, well, it's nothing like that. That's television. You know, that's crime to conviction in 60 minutes with commercials. You know, that's not what we do. And our job now has really changed to so many different things. It's not just prosecuting cases. You know, my job is I'm the chief law enforcement official here in Plymouth County for all state crimes. We have state crimes and we have federal crimes. Any crime that occurs here in Plymouth County for prosecution will go through our office, and that goes from trespass, shoplifting, drunk driving, to homicides. From the least misdemeanors to the most serious felonies, all go through our office. And we do have, you know, Plymouth County is a great county. It is approximately 530,000 people, 800 square miles. We have 27 communities, one city, the city of Brockton, and we have rural areas, we have suburban areas, and we have urban areas. So we have a whole mix of the things that we do. And what I've learned in that prosecuting the roughly, you know, pre-COVID, anywhere between 18 to 20,000 criminal cases per year that happen in our county, where we have 60 lawyers, another probably 30 or 40 victim witness advocates and administrative staff, all who work hard every day to do the best that they can in a really challenging time in law enforcement. Some of the most important things we do are on the front end. They're on prevention side. They're on dealing with kids who are dealing with significant issues in their lives, drug-endangered kids, kids with adverse childhood experiences, kids who come from high at-risk families. How do you keep those kids out of the system? Real criminal justice reform is keeping kids out of the system. Kids who have been abused, kids who are going through difficult times in their lives, those are the kids we have to help on the front end, and we'll stop cycles of that down there. But we see, you know, we come to schools all the time. We talk about cyber sense. We talk about the challenging world that's going on for our kids nowadays, because virtually every kid's got one of these. And kids are on their phones all their time, and they're talking to people who they think are their friends, and they think they may be living nearby. And what we try to teach them, and what we try to talk to parents about, because, you know, it's important for parents, and I'm a parent too, it's important for parents to understand the challenges that our kids face, much bigger than what they were when we were all growing up. And the much bigger out there are the challenges that we face, even things that maybe were going on back when we were kids ourselves. So my primary concern is making sure that our kids remain safe and keeping these kids out of the system. At least one 11th grade kid had one drink in the past 32 days, 32%. That's a pretty big number. Seniors, 46%. So how can we make sure that our kids are going to be safe? You know, we continue to do studies here in our county and trying to see the issues that our kids are dealing with. The numbers that are up there regarding what the kids think are moderate or great. You know, what the kids are dealing with, the risks that they believe that they have from either inhalants, alcohol, Ritalin, Adderall, marijuana. What we continue to see is that, you know, in light of the fact that marijuana for individuals that are now over the age of 21 is legal, a lot of kids think that marijuana is organic. It's good for you. It's way better than nicotine. We don't see kids really smoking cigarettes like they were back when we were younger going back. But we see kids out there that are smoking marijuana. And as we go out and do our job, and what we're seeing in our community, and what we're seeing here is that kids, be careful. Please be careful what's out there, because sometimes you may go to a party and there may be somebody that has it. Now remember, you're all under the age of 21, so it's not legal for you. However, there's many other drugs out there right now, and we're seeing them constantly. Fentanyl, carfentanil, xylazine. We're seeing a lot of mixtures of drugs into marijuana. I was a big opponent of the legalization of marijuana because I argued that we in Massachusetts weren't ready for it. We weren't ready, our laws weren't ready for it. We didn't have the ability to go after certain things and making sure we could, like in an alcohol case where we're going to get a breathalyzer and blood test results. We don't have anything like that for marijuana. But it passed nonetheless. And that makes it a challenge where we're trying to prove cases where people get hurt. And people do get hurt from a variety of things. Here in our county, we're dealing with fatal opiate overdoses. And that is a big thing right now. And it has been for quite a period of time. In our county, we noticed, because all of the troopers who work for the DA's office, we have roughly 20 troopers, Massachusetts State Police troopers, who are the assigned investigators for all homicides and major drug cases that occur in our county. What that means is that for any unattended death, if somebody passes away at home, if somebody passes away in a non-hospital setting, that means that the local police, when they arrive, they're going to call the state police assigned to my office, because by statute, all unattended deaths have to be reviewed by the district attorney and the medical examiner. So when our troopers are showing up at scenes and they're seeing the numbers that are out there, the true numbers of people who are dealing with fatal opiate overdoses, and we've watched our numbers here in our county. And it's funny because we put together, as a result of the opiate overdoses going on here, myself and Sheriff McDonald put together the Plymouth County Drug Abuse Task Force, which is really a clearinghouse of bringing information together, trying to help people, try and let them understand. Bringing in education people, bringing in faith-based people, bringing in legislators, judges, medical professionals, bringing our whole county together so it's a clearinghouse of information so that we can get it. Here in Hingham, we have Hingham Cares. We have all different groups throughout our county, and we share information. And from that drug task force came what's known as Plymouth County Outreach. And Plymouth County Outreach, I think, is the first group of individuals. It's all 27 communities in Plymouth County. All 27 police chiefs and Bridgewater State University have signed on to it. And what that means is that within 12 to 24 hours of a non-fatal overdose, there will be a recovery coach and a plainclothes policeman showing up at that house bringing information because of the stigma that goes on with that. We watched our numbers in Plymouth County, our fatal opiate overdoses, go down when everybody else's are going up. And that was going on at a very direct trend right up until COVID. And when COVID came, those recovery coaches and those police officers, they couldn't go anymore to the homes. We saw our numbers go up. After COVID, we're seeing our numbers go down again. And that's a good, positive thing. But one death is still too many. And what I'm trying to say overall is that to the young women that are out here tonight, to our future leaders, to our seniors who are here, who are about to enter a world of responsibility as you go to college, and your parents are behind you, and your parents love you, and your parents are going to support you, what I say to you is make sure you're careful in all the different situations that are out there, and that you're going to have to make sure you protect yourself and also protect your friends. If you see one of your friends in a situation where they need help, help them, because it's going to be important. That shows, that you have a situation where people are using drugs and alcohol at an earlier age. They're going to be more likely to keep on that situation. Studies have shown that the longer you can stay away from drugs and alcohol, as your brain develops, and although girls, you probably know this, your brains develop a heck of a lot faster than boys. But your brains are still developing. The longer you can put off using any sort of drugs, the better off you're going to be. There are signs and symptoms of changes, or things that you're taking when you are taking drugs, that parents can look for the kids. Changes in activity, changes with friends, things that are right there that you can look at when it pertains to the dependency, the issues that are going on with our kids' lives, the frequency, what they're doing. They change everything. They're a good, hard-working kid. All of a sudden, they're not that hard-working anymore. All of a sudden, they're hanging around with different kids. All of a sudden, you're noticing in their eyes that things are changing. We as parents, we notice those things about our kids. And you should be noticing those sort of things. The most important thing we can do is pay attention. Sometimes the changes are right in front of us, and whether we want to see them or not, it's important for us to do that. I hear this a lot. The kids are going to drink anyways. So why don't we put together a supervised situation so that they can drink and we can monitor them, and therefore we can make sure that they're not going to get into trouble. Well, first of all, it's illegal. It's illegal to provide alcohol, furnish alcohol to minors. And the thing that I've seen over the years is, kids are a heck of a lot smarter than we are. And if you had a party, for instance, that you were going to take all the kids' keys, right? They can't drive, they can't leave. What we've found out is that you're not going to get the keys to the car they came in. You're going to get somebody else's car keys. They're not going to do that. They're young. They're interested in trying things out. And I think that's why if you decide to be a social host, in other words, have a party where the kids come over, those are things you have to be very careful about, because you're opening the door to potential civil and criminal liability. And those are two different things. Two different things, but equally damaging to you. Civil liability is not what we do in the DA's office. We prosecute the criminal end of it, but I'll tell you, as soon as there's a terrible event, as soon as there is an accident, some kid has left a party and got into an accident and hurt somebody or killed themselves, the first person I hear from are the lawyers of the decedent, who are reaching out to get police reports, get information. Because what they're doing is they're going to be looking at the situation to see whether or not it fits into the parameters of being in a situation that you can sue somebody. That's all civil liability is. It's about money. It's about damages. Criminal liability, criminal responsibility, it could potentially, and I'll show some of that as we go forward. And by the way, there's stuff outside that we have little brochures and things such as that regarding social host liability, underage drinking, and also our diversion program. Please grab a pamphlet on the way out just to check it out and see what's out there. We have the penalties that you're going to hear me talking about up here on the criminal aspect. We have them reduced to writing out there for you, so you don't have to, not that anybody's writing it down, but if you were interested in that, that stuff's right out there. And it's interesting to see what will happen when something terrible happens. Now, we're used to dealing with that, and that's unfortunate to say. I've been to a lot of scenes, variety of scenes, terrible things that have happened, and usually, quite honestly, if somebody came up to me recently and said they recognized me because I've been around a long time, and they said, I don't know you, but I know you from seeing you on television, and you're always at terrible things. So if you see me, you think something bad. And that's why, to me, it's important for me to be at things like this. And it's important for people to understand that we're here to help, to stop these situations before they get worse. Civil liability involves a lawsuit. So an event happens, somebody retains an attorney, whether it be somebody who was hurt, somebody's estate, somebody who's been killed. And what it means is they're going to be seeking monetary compensation for the injuries that they can causally relate to the underage drinking on a social host property or premises that they control. And there's always going to be factual questions of what fits into what. What I always say is that, somebody's going to seek money for injuries, and they're going to look for the social host, the person who had the party. That's where they're going, all right? That's where the alcohol is. And that's where they need to go to establish negligence or responsibility. So what it does is it makes sure that they can hold people accountable. And what it really means in the real world to us parents is that if you had a party and if something terrible happened, I hope you paid your homeowner's insurance. And I hope you have sufficient coverage. Because as you'll find out during the current case law, in order to be held responsible on a civil level regarding social host liability, you have to furnish the alcohol, all right? But I guarantee you this, if you had a party at your house and you made sure that you did the very best you could to monitor what was going on, talking to the kids, but you want to give them their space, and if something terrible happened, everybody's getting sued. That's what lawyers do. Everybody's getting sued because what actually happened, who actually provided the alcohol, that's going to be a question of fact. And whether or not Johnny and Susie brought a six-pack to a house that already had, maybe they had the same kind of beer, and the people are drinking beer, and you have empty containers floating around, I guarantee you, if you have a party like that, the lawyers sue everybody and let all the insurance companies work it out. That's the way that it works. So even if you do the best you can, and I'm sure you would, you could be opening the door for potential civil liability. You know, damages are what they call the amount of money. And it's just that. You know, not that you could ever equate a sum of money for the extent of the injury or death that somebody had, but they can do that. They can figure it out. The estimated earnings of John Doe, who was 18 years old, who had his whole life in front of him, who was doing this, that, the other thing, had this higher level of education, who if his dad was a doctor, maybe he was going to be a doctor. That's going to knock the number up. And that's going to put you on the hook for more. And if you don't have sufficient coverage, you could certainly be in trouble. We had a case nearby here where there were deaths involved that a Massachusetts jury said the damages were $8 million. The people in that instance lost their home. There was a case that came down, a Supreme Judicial Court case that came down in the last few years where a young girl and a boyfriend brought beer to a party. The host of the party didn't serve them alcohol, didn't make any available to them. The boyfriend drank his own beer, and then he left. He crashed into a telephone pole, and the girl with him was severely injured. The court at that time changed the law regarding on the premises, and they said that the case law said that the host had no civil responsibility because they didn't furnish the alcohol. But this brings you back to what I've already said. That's a question of fact. Who furnished the alcohol? That means that you're going to be brought in. That means that there's going to be written questions you're going to get, interrogatories, request production of documents, you're going to be deposed. A long, painful ordeal. It really is. Something you don't want to have to deal with, and your kids don't want to have to deal with it. So like I said, this Giuliani case, social hosts can be held liable for an injury to a third party caused by the drunk driving of guests only in the cases where the host had actually served alcohol and made it available. However, even if you don't provide the alcohol, social host liability in the criminal aspect of it, you can still be held responsible at that end of it. Because not all of our crimes are dealing with the actual furnishing of the alcohol. We have some crimes that are more vague than others. Not vague to be thrown out, but vague because they're generalized. Contributing to the delinquency of a minor. So if you provide a place that allows individuals, kids underage, to drink, and subsequently they drive and something terrible happens, or even if nothing terrible happens, the fact that you're there and you're providing that place can put you in a position where you could be charged with contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The penalty is a maximum of 1 year in jail or a $500 fine. Mass General Law, Chapter 138-34, the sale, delivery, furnishing alcohol to a person under 21 years old. Furnishing means to knowingly or intentionally supply, give, provide, or allow access, possession of alcoholic beverages on premises. Once again, the penalty, 1 year in jail or a $2,000 fine. And those are the maximum penalties. I'm not here to scare anybody, but still, it's something that's there. It's a crime that's there. It's a crime that you don't need to deal with. There's also exposure, criminal liability for minors, all right, for juveniles. Here in Massachusetts, that's under the age of 18. So for minors, attempting to purchase alcoholic beverages could result up to a $300 fine and a license suspension for 180 days. Guys, I guarantee you all work really hard to get your licenses, right? You had to go to driver's ed school. Your parents had to go to classes. It cost you a lot of money to get it done. You worked really hard for it. If you get pinched on one of these allegations, you can lose your license for up to 180 days, and that means you're going to have to go through a reinstatement fee with the registries, which is at least $1,000. So from a sheer financial aspect of it, that's something you don't want to do. You don't want to see yourself in a situation where that's going to happen. A minor in possession or transporting alcohol could receive a $50 fine for the first offense, which doesn't sound like it's that much, and a $150 fine and a license suspension of 90 days for a second offense. Once again, when your license gets taken from you, it's not like it was 25, 30 years ago. Now you're going to have to work to get it back. It's going to cost you time, it's going to cost you money, and it's things that you don't need in your life. Minors, OUI, operating under the influence of intoxicating liquor. In Massachusetts, we always hear about drunk driving. Drunk driving in Massachusetts is a misnomer. It doesn't exist. We have operating under the influence of alcohol or drugs, okay? What's the difference? The difference is you're operating your motor vehicle if you have your keys in the ignition. So if you are driving your car, and maybe you've had a drink too many, and you pull into you're on the highway, you're on 495 or whatever, and you pull over to take a nap in the parking area on the side of the road. If your keys are in the ignition, even if the car is off, in Massachusetts, you're operating your car. So people nowadays obviously will take their keys out. Obviously, the most important thing is to make sure that you're not drinking and driving, or taking drugs and driving, or smoking marijuana and driving. Marijuana is an issue for the purposes of the prosecution, which is another reason, like I told you earlier, why I was so against the changes in the law. Because we in Massachusetts, my argument was, we were not ready to change to legalize marijuana at the age over 21. We had gone from decriminalization to subsequent legalization. And it's very difficult to prove in Massachusetts. Like I said, we don't have a breath test for marijuana. The truest read is always going to be your blood. So if you get arrested or pulled over for OUI, operating under the influence, they're going to be offering you an opportunity to take a breath test. If you refuse your breath test, you're going to lose your right to operate a motor vehicle for a period of time, depending upon what number OUI it is for you. However, because in Massachusetts, your right, you don't have a right to operate, it's a privilege to operate. Remember that when you're driving your cars. It's a privilege to operate, it's not your right. So by refusing the breath test, you're going to automatically lose your license for a period of time, even if you're eventually found not guilty. They're two different animals, okay? The penalties for a first offense OUI for a minor, it depends what it is, but usually it's taking an alcohol program, a license suspension up to 5 years and 5 years for a fifth offense. There are different ramifications for youngsters who are driving regarding the breath test. If you refuse your breath test, or if you blow a breath test of .02 or greater, there's an immediate 180-day loss of license. Same situation. That means when they take your license, you're going to have to get it reinstated. It's going to be costing you time and money. Never mind the fact that if you're subsequently convicted, it's going to be a whole different world of probation and things that you're going to have to do. And that's assuming something bad hasn't happened. So a word to the wise is, don't drink and drive. In Massachusetts, the per se number for operating for an adult, if you're driving your motor vehicle, and if you get pulled over, and if you choose to take the breath test, and you blow .08 or higher, you are per se presumed to be under the influence of intoxicating liquor. And therefore, you have to rebut that by saying, I wasn't. Because virtually everybody that gets pulled over in the police reports I see in the non-serious cases, in other words, in the non-death cases or serious injuries cases, everybody says, I had 2 beers. Everybody says, I had 2 beers. Everybody had more than 2 beers. And when the police officers pull you over, they're trained police officers, they make observations of you. They will look at your eyes, they'll have a conversation with you regarding your speech, see if it's slurred, they'll see if you're unsteady on your feet, they will do field sobriety tests, they'll ask you to touch your nose, hold up 1 foot for a period of time while you're counting a certain number. And they'll make a judgment on that regarding whether or not they believe that there's probable cause to exist to arrest you for operating under the influence of alcohol. The penalties, depending upon what you blow, are much more severe. If you're between the ages of 18 and 21 and you blow a .20 or more, that's going to require with it a 14-day inpatient program. In other words, you have to go to a hospital at that point. .20 is a significant amount of alcohol, blood alcohol to have in your system. It's a lot. It's 2.5 times the legal limit here in Massachusetts. So if you have that sort of blood alcohol content, you are probably at risk that you have significant alcohol issues. And normally what will happen for an adult on the disposition on your second OUI, so you have your first one, that's usually puts you in the drinking and driving program, you're on probation for a couple of years, you stay out of trouble, you will eventually get your license back because you're going to lose it for 45 days if you refuse the breath test for the first offense. On your second offense, if you have one, that comes with a mandatory 14-day inpatient program also. But for kids, if it's your first offense and if you blow a really big number, or if you have in your blood alcohol a really big number, that is enough that it's going to affect, once again, your ability to have your license. And these are the most serious cases. These are the motor vehicle homicides, the Melanie manslaughters that we have out there, these terrible cases that we have seen. Now, like I said, I've been the district attorney now for 22 years. I've been a criminal trial lawyer here in Plymouth County for 37 years. That's a long time. And I've seen a lot of terrible cases and a lot of terrible situations that go through our court system. And we had a case a few years back where it just stuck out at me what was going on in that courtroom, where a young girl, 20, 21, was driving under the influence down near one of our colleges here in Plymouth County. And it was late at night, 1:30 in the morning, and 3 other kids were walking down the road. And it was late at night, and this girl had been bopping from party to party. And she ended up hitting all 3 of them. And she killed a young girl. And she significantly hurt a young man. And she was charged with OUI, motor vehicle homicide. And so we have to prove the operating under the influence, and also operated either negligently or recklessly, and by such operation did cause the death of a person or serious bodily injury. I go to court, and I was watching the disposition. The girl pled guilty, and as she stood there, her family was on one side of the courtroom, and the families of the 3 families that were affected, of the 2 other people who weren't killed but were significantly injured, and the family of the young girl who had died, they were there. And everybody was crying, and everybody was upset, and I heard this young girl get up there crying her eyes out. And what she said was, "I wish I could change places with the person that I killed. I wish I could, but I can't." And you know, I believed her. I believe she would change places with that if she could, but she can't, because the action has consequences, and some of them are irreparable, and you can't change them. The only thing everybody in that courtroom had in common, every person in that courtroom, everybody loses. Everybody. Some families lost their loved one forever, young kid. One kid lost a career because of the injuries he received. They will all forever have that in their head. What happened that night that happened in an instant? And that one girl went to jail. When you go out with your friends, you never think something like that's going to happen to you. You never think that if I had a drink, it's not a big deal. It can happen. It does happen. It's so important for you guys to remember that. It's really important for you to do that. Because once something like that happens, we can't turn back the clock. And your parents, as much as they love you, they can't either. As much as they'd love to. We continue to see so many of these terrible events. So many of them. And you look at them, and you look at the situations, and you try to figure out as best as you can that how can you help the families, how can you help the kids, and how can we make sure that there's educational opportunities for kids to understand. That's why I'm glad that Notre Dame has you here tonight, has you here. I know it may be mandatory, but to me it's mandatorily important for you to hear this as you're about to enter the world in the next month or two before you go out and go off to college. We have diversion programs. Like I said, we deal with many programs whereby we try to help people on the front end, and we understand. Everybody, when you're young and irresponsible, you're young and irresponsible. And that when you make a mistake, it shouldn't affect your ability the rest of your life to go to school, get a job, whatever it may be. So we have diversionary programs for kids with no prior record, and to make sure that they don't get arraigned in court. So if they get arrested on one of those nominal offenses, that they can do community service. They have their cases dismissed prior to arraignment. Arraignment is the official notification of the charges against you. So if you ever see people walking in court, when they walk in and the judge goes, or the clerks will say to them, Cruz, you're charged with disturbing the peace. How do you plead guilty or not guilty? They plead not guilty. I have now been formally arraigned. I have now formally been notified of the charges against me. I'll enter a plea of not guilty, and the case will go on. Before that happens in the diversion cases, because by doing just that simple act, it creates a CORI, a criminal offender record information, which then that potentially can affect you even if it gets dismissed. So it's important for people to understand that what we try to do is handle those on a pre-arraignment fashion, making sure that the kids take the classes that they can take to stay out of trouble. Those are some of the charges that we deal with, that are dealing with, we put them in diversion programs, shoplifting, disorderly, disturbing. And we also look at them, for obviously nonviolent cases where somebody's not hurt. We also have adult diversion programs for kids that are 18 to 28. We started as a pilot over at the Hingham District Court on George Washington Boulevard a number of years ago, because we always had diversion programs. We had diversion programs for juveniles for really the last 35, 40 years. But we started this because a lot of it was dealing with alcohol-related offenses, and it requires those kids who are adults, to make sure they complete a comprehensive alcohol class online. We also set it up so that the parents, if they want to go on also, they can go on for free, also to see how that's working. If the juvenile is charged with an alcohol offense, he's going to take that comprehensive online course. And I think, the goal is really to, from our standpoint, to encourage an open dialogue between the parent and the child regarding what happened. The good news of diversion is that the majority of the kids that have been through the diversion program, we never see them again. Like I said, most kids, we're all going to make mistakes. And if it's a nominal mistake, it shouldn't affect your ability to live your life. And that's why juvenile diversion cases have been, and adult diversion cases have been very successful. The adult cases, those are some of the examples that we deal with, who can qualify. And all that stuff is written down in the pamphlets out front if you want to take care of those. Adult diversion involves an online class that instructs on the emotional and physical effects of alcohol and drugs, the dangers of drinking and driving, consequences, and learning healthy ways to respond to peer pressure. It's funny, when we go out and we talk to various kids, whether they be in fifth grade or seniors, the peer pressure and the issues that kids are dealing with now are significant. And the social media that's out there is significant. And all of our kids are dealing with it. Everything is immediate. I can get this now. I can get information right now. So, regarding what can we do as parents? Be present and visible at your home. If you're worried about, your child going out nights or on weekends, you can have something at your house, have your buddies come over, but be vigilant. It's your house, it's your child. If your child goes to somebody else's house, make sure you're talking to the parent. Make sure that you understand what's going on over there, they understand the parameters that you believe in. And if not, make sure that those kids are in a situation where they can't hurt someone. We always do these social host programs around prom time, graduation time. And I think that, I've been to classes before where, I remember we were at one of the nearby towns once, and the kids were, I think it was junior prom, the kids were going to the Westin Hotel in Boston at Copley Place. And one of the moms, after I did this presentation, came up to me and said, what do you think of this? I'm going to do this. I'm going to rent a room for the kids. And they're going to have, so that all the kids can go in, they can all be there. We're not going to have any parents there because, we want to make sure that they can talk and have fun and have a good time. We think parents being there would really, get into that, tear that down. What do you think of that? I go, that's a terrible idea. I mean, these are our kids. We love them. They're smart. But they're also going to try to pull one by you. You know that. I know that. And so if you're going to, especially if you're going to Boston from, one of our towns down this way, it just wasn't the message I hoped to get after speaking at one of these, But I think she understood. I think she saw from the shocked look on my face that, wow, that's probably not the best thing to do. I think we have to remember, at the end of the day, that our kids are watching us all the time. They're very smart. They pay attention. They see what we do. They will eventually turn into us. I was walking by a mirror last week, and I looked in the mirror, and not this is the same thing, but and I looked and I go, oh my God, my father's here, because that's where you end up. And I think that, as we come to the end of the time of these young women here at this school, I think that we have a responsibility to let them know that, we're no longer, not that you were, going to be there all the time, all the helicopter parent sort of thing that you're going to find out when they go to school. And I remember when I took my kids to school, we were told, well, brought into a room like this at the college, and they said, basically, if your kid doesn't get a good grade, you can't contact the teacher, and things like that. It's a different world out there right now, and our kids are better off standing on their own and making sure that we can help them while we can help them. I hope that you guys all have a great graduation. I hope you have a great prom. Be careful. Take care of each other. And I mean that. Because, you might be in a position to make a difference in somebody's life. And that is truly the best thing you can do for anybody. So I thank you all for coming out tonight.